Hi, welcome to Beav-Art Talks. This will be the ninth episode, I believe. I hope so, because I've got it wrong otherwise. But my next guest is Leo. We've been wanting to have this chat for a little while now. We worked together with for this year in Brighton Festival for the Our Place event. Leo was our um, resident artist this year for um, the East Brighton area, and his art is mainly land art, and he works with nature and runs workshops of different types of various projects. And he's based in London, and I am so happy that he's agreed to join me today via video call. But it's a pleasure to have you on, Leo. Thank you. Could I ask you to explain a little bit about your art and just so people who don't know your work kind of have a kind of insight of what you do and where you're from?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I describe my practice as installation because I think that's a kind of a fairly broad description. I think finally the kind of most uh, vague in some ways that covers everything. So the kind of land art stuff is part of what I do, but it's just one element. Um, so kind of working within nature, open space, kind of really started about um, 15 years ago. I was an
Okay.
artist in residence in Northumberland for a year, in the middle of nowhere, with a residency called VARC, Visual Arts in the Rural Communities. And that was kind of where it's in a little area called Tarset,
Right.
very small amount of people live there. And I just kind of, the plan was just to kind of focus on working within the landscape and using what was available. So not taking anything within into the landscape, not taking anything away other than tools, camera, whatever. And so that was my approach for that project, and that led to being more involved in stuff connected to the kind of land art practices.
So did you always have that kind of vision that your art was going to go in that direction, or did it just happen by, happy coincidence from the first project that you ended up going through with nature and land art?
It was. I tend to respond to where I am, so I think that's
Okay.
the installation point is that working within the whether it's a building, an architecture, society that the sites we find ourselves in, and what feeds into those social, political, um, architectural, and how how we respond to that. And that's been around within my practice probably since the early 90s. I changed the way I worked from going from having a very fairly traditional painting practice. I started painting, um, and then I just generated all this stuff. I'd moved from Leeds to London and took with me this van load of paintings and drawings and stuff, and filled this this space with all this old stuff. And I just thought, I'm just going to pause making
All right.
work for a while. I'm just going to stop making stuff and just write or make notes for things. So if I want to make a painting, I'm just going to describe it. Then I'll remember what I wanted to do, and then that'll become the reference if I want to go back to that. But in that process, I was looking at a lot of other artists' work, making really small things if I made anything, um, and or again just making notes for stuff. And through that process, I changed the way that I work. And one of the first things that happened was a series of photographs where I took the old paintings I'd brought down from Yorkshire and start to take them all apart. And in that taking them apart, I just started to document them or documenting this dismantling because then I was keeping the wood to use for other things or the
Right.
frames. Um, and then a lot of it went on the fire. So I did an old studio at King's Cross, and we had coal fires in the space, and so some of it just got chopped up and thrown on the fire. So there's this process of like this deconstruction of these works. In the process, other stuff was
Right.
going to be made from them, but also energy was generated on the fire. So it was this like little narrative, which then became a little further down the line an installation, a tabletop installation called Monumental Sculpture, which was the photographs and texts that paired with these photographs of this dismantling and this kind of responding to these things as, you know, the liberation of energy, the phoenix from the ashes, the creating something out of something else. So that kind of process of responding to stuff and a
Yeah.
site, and that started from there, from studios. And I also started to work very much in relation to this studio space. I was taken over around the back of King's Cross in Goods Way. You know, King's Cross, but where the gasworks used to be. I was kind of in the shadow of the gasworks in this building
Oh,
for about
right.
11 years. It's a really brilliant space at the back of King's Cross. And quite an interesting old building, and just responding to that space as well through working with shadow and light and painting shadows onto the walls as again an early
Awesome.
kind of work in relation to that. So, and then I think in about 96 I did an installation with First Sight in Colchester before they moved to their new building. This was pre the big fancy new space, and it was an old part of it was old, part of it was Tudor. There was an old folly at the bottom of the garden, 19th century, but the front
Wow.
section was probably 1970s. So it was like a real mix of architectures. And I went there, and that was the first time I went somewhere expecting to um, uh, present some existing works, some shadow puppets and stuff.
Nice.
Uh, and left, and I just started to write a story. Uh, and it was in response to the architecture. So I ended up writing kind of like a fairy tale based on Hansel and Gretel.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. Based on like the folklores and
yeah, but connected to what was currently going on in the press. So Fred West had been around, you know, like murdering
right.
everybody.
Yeah.
There's stuff to do with, you know, bulimia and eating disorders. I think it was kind of around that time was the first time it started to appear quite a lot in the news. So I just wove into this story uh, um, contemporary news information, and that was the
Hmm.
first time I worked like that, and that became a kind of basis for a lot of works, things I'm working on still. I still work with folk narratives um, and contemporary stuff that's going on. And so going to Northumberland and working in relation to the land, again, it was just a similar way of working, just responding to the plays. In Northumberland, I'd been before in Northumberland, I've been spending a lot of time in Berlin. Um, Previous 10 years, I've spent a lot of
That
time
must
there.
have been amazing in Berlin.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring a bit of Berlin to Northumberland, which through graffiti.
Awesome.
So just and I was interested in how you might be able to develop a kind of like a graffiti for the countryside. So that's one
Was
of
that
the.
your fragile work? With the broken glass and the word fragile? There was like a moss on the ground, I think I've seen one of
No,
your
that was
pictures.
it. Uh, yeah, so that came later.
Oh,
That was
okay.
in Berlin.
Sorry.
And that was about a few years later actually after being in Tarsa. That was kind of returning back to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Funny. But the first thing was building text into the dry stone walls in
Right.
Northumberland. So there was curious, be curious, and then a THC reference, which is a drugs reference, tetrahydrocannabinol, which is a lazy bit of graffiti in Berlin. I think it's lazy. People doing it probably don't, but I just thought it's a it appears like cigarette butts and chewing gum stuck on the floor, anywhere else. And you just see it everywhere. And one day I went out and thought I'm just going to document it because I want to use it as reference, for teaching. And I walked for like 15 minutes down the street, and I think I took like maybe 15 photographs of tags of like big, graffiti paintings, little scratchings on windowsills. Just this, there's so much. I don't know if it's still the same, but
Right.
so I thought, but as a reference to Berlin, I thought it was useful, but also as this lazy, really, I think like a bit of graffiti. I thought maybe if I can build it in a wall in Northumberland as a dry stone wall, then if I return it to Berlin, and that was always the idea that somehow I'd try and take things back,
Right.
keep this kind of conversation going. If I can return it, and maybe the graffiti artists in Berlin who are all the potheads who are doing this might, kind of wake up and go, actually, we don't need to do that anymore. It's been done as a dry stone wall in
That's cool.
Northumberland. And maybe they'll go to art school, or they'll, do something else, and develop their practice a little bit more. Don't think it happened, but I did manage to return it through I did a couple of years after building the walls, 2011, 2012.
Right.
I did a series of billboards on the Berlin Underground, and I showed the making of the wall. So a series of just 4 photographs of showing the wall in construction, and then the final wall. It was meant to be, I think, a 6-month project, and it ended up staying on the as the billboards for 2, 3, 4 years. I can't remember. They stayed
Oh,
up for quite a
wow.
long time, and they were finally taken down. And it was a shame because they were never graffitied. They were
Oh, that's
never
cool. That's
attacked
interesting that
by
they'd never
anybody.
got tagged or
Yeah,
anything.
no. So there was they achieved some kind of you know respect or something from the kids on the street.
That's really interesting because
There
normally
was
things like that, within a few months, it's got some sort of scribble on it or a tag or a sticker or some sort, but
yeah.
must have had an impact on the people who are viewing it.
Yes, I think. Well, I'd like to think so. Maybe they just never went to that tube station.
Maybe, but I kind of feel like the all of the notes that you've accumulated over the years of the projects that you've been part of or stuff that you've created, surely that could be an exhibition in itself with all of these different types of notes or all the photos that you've accumulated over the years of all the different projects. You could have a really good um a good exhibition there or some sort of exhibition.
Yeah, I'll leave you to sort it out. You get it, organize it as a project for
Is
you.
there a lot? Oh, I bet there's a lot. Oh, it could take a while
Yeah,
then.
yeah, and I think, and there is a lot of documentation, especially stuff like that, is essential because otherwise it's gone. I mean, some of the dry stone walls still exist in Northumberland, so they're still
That's
standing,
amazing.
but there's but over years they're just they've returned to the original color, so you can still read the text. Particularly on the curious wall, you can still read the text if you know what you're looking for. But
But I bet it looks so much nicer now with all like moss growing or all of the if there's nature's taken over a little bit and
it's not so much. There is moss growing on the back of it, some really
oh, okay.
interesting moss growing on the back of it. But on the front, because that's where it gets the wind.
Right. So it's still
It's
kind
just
of fresh as it
it's just
was.
it's not fresh at all. It's just gone back to kind of old stone, so it's kind of like looks kind of and I guess there is some moss growing on it, but it's mostly it's the clean sandstone has gone back to more of a grey
Ah,
darker kind of look, which is all right. It's fine. It's like it's a
okay.
natural kind of thing. And within something like an exhibition, it would be interesting to see how it looks now.
But is it still legible?
If you know what you're looking for, you can make it out. because of the
Okay.
way that it was constructed. Um, how I use the stone to kind of write the words. Because I built the wall from the ground up. I used what was available, the available stone, to then reconstruct the collapsed walls. There's like loads of collapsed walls in Northumberland, and they do. There was quite a lot of money from Europe, funnily enough,
Yeah.
Brexit, for investing in rural communities across Europe, and so dry stone wall did really well out of Brexit, because they were employed to rebuild these walls. But as soon as the money's gone, you can put up a fence, a wire fence in a few hours. Well, it'll take you days and days to do on a dry stone wall.
Wow.
I mean, you can do 100 meters in a morning, whereas to do 100 meters of dry stone wall, it's going to take you bloody ages.
Blimey. So what part of the process do you enjoy the most in creating your arts pieces or the workshops you run or anything of your practice? What's the process you enjoy the most?
Um, I think that varies. You have times where you get into an idea and the research is really interesting, but then when you find out you've just taken 10 books to read, then that it becomes work, doesn't it? And this
Yeah,
and that's one thing that I say is like everything's work and everything's play.
right.
There's and that can be for anybody. If you take pleasure in what you do, then then it can be like playing. I know that there's a museum in Yorkshire, the mining museum. There are people there going down the pit. Now they're obviously not knocking coal out, but they're still spending time underground and making sure it functions and dealing with
Yeah,
it. And they're doing it for free. They're doing it as volunteers because I guess they enjoy it. It's a social event or whatever. But within my practice, um, it's really interesting developing the ideas, and then the making. It can be interesting just figuring out, trying out to do things. So I think all levels are, all bits of it are all pleasurable and all, but can also be uh, work. You've got to get on with it. Um, Building that dry stone wall was, it was in the middle of nowhere. It took me 6 weeks over the biggest one, 6 weeks over a 3 month period.
was that because they're trying to get the material and the people out there to the place to
It was
took
just
a
me
long
on my
time?
own
Oh,
doing it
really?
in the middle of nowhere. So nobody walked by. I found a location that was very isolated because I didn't want people walking by and going, "Oh, you're not doing that right." Or
Oh, no, no. Yeah, that's
I just wanted to be left. But also, that was one reason. It was also, there was a lot of material around, so a lot of fallen walls. So there was plenty of material to work with.
oh, cool. So yeah,
Um,
you didn't have to get much material shipped over there.
yeah, and I just ran up and down with a wheelbarrow. In the morning, I would look out the window, and if it was raining, I would stay in, and if it wasn't, I'd go. And then I'd say I'd like to cycle to the bottom of the hill and then walk about another mile uh, to where this wall was. Um, and it could be throwing it down with rain, and by the time I got there, or at some point in the day, or then it could also be boiling hot.
Yeah.
And it might be invaded by a load of cows, might want to come and see what's going on. Um, and it was, really hard work, physical work. I've never done anything quite like it. Um, but it was extraordinary location in the middle of Northumberland. The weather, every time you turn around, the weather had changed again. There's migration of birds at certain times, arriving from somewhere.
Wow.
Um, uh, Burning the fields. There's this constant change of view, perspective, and stuff. And so it was extraordinary, but it was also extremely physically
But what a job, though. How relaxing and calming would that be just to be out there, just doing that
Yeah, on your own
all day
time,
long? Yeah.
no, no pressure to.
Surrounded by nature and enjoying the environment. That's beautiful. Really good way of making art.
Yeah, but unusual to be able to have that. You know, it's a
Yeah.
year-long residency, and there are so few options or opportunities like that at the moment, and doesn't get easy.
So how do you know when you've finished your piece then?
Um,
Or can it
I
vary on
think,
different projects?
yeah, probably. I mean, with that, building a wall, then uh, um, with something like that, I've done enough. You can read it,
Yeah.
and I could. And the first section I did, so it says "Be curious," and the first section, if you see the two together, I really learned quite a lot on the B. Um, so I could have
That,
gone
yeah,
back and
that
done that
letter would be
again.
quite difficult, wouldn't it? In
Uh,
itself.
yeah, unless you've got the right stone, and that was again was a learning process, figuring out what's the best stone, and also the what cuts. So finished when it kind of done enough, and sometimes if you get to a point where it can start to evolve into something else, it's that kind of decision of better to stop it now and start another piece, or do I allow that to kind of evolve into something else? And when I say that, I'm thinking about something like a painting, something like an installation. Um, I guess you bring all these bits together and you want it to kind of function. And when all those things are in the space together and um, work, um, visually together, where the sound works, um, as well as the technology, um, technical aspects, they're all functioning. Uh, then I guess, yeah, I, I can't, I don't know. Actually, I don't know what's the answer to that question.
That's all right.
Because now I'm also thinking about a piece of work that I did about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And I really want to redo the sound on it. So again, it's finished in one stage, but actually I might redo some of the sound again. This is actually 14 years later. Um, uh, so, and I think at some points, you start to make a mess, don't you? Especially with things like drawing or painting something. It gets to a point where you see you're going too far, or you've gone too far, and you've got to try
Yeah,
to
I hate that. When you know you've overworked it and you think, oh, it was at a good space, but you kind of keep tinkering away at it sometimes because you feel like there's something else. Or
yeah, or you just I mean that kind of looking as well. So I think this thing of um, if you're looking to do something and you think, oh, it's I just want to do a bit more. It's nearly finished or whatever, um, and then um, you've kind of moved on from somewhere else, and you realise that you've done this, and actually it's didn't realise you could actually do that, or you've figured out how to do something, or you've made something that is a leap from something you've done before, or it's a leap from something somebody else has done before. It's a shift from away from what someone else is doing. You kind of see what you're doing within this context of a discussion, art world discussion, or an art in relation to other artists' works.
Mhm.
Um, but then does it? Uh, what am I trying to say? I think it's this thing of when it's got to a point where uh, you've given an answer to something, and that's within this piece of work that you've made. Um, then you might not necessarily know that you've given the answer until uh, you've gone beyond it and undermined yourself, or changed the question, or I don't know. That's it. That's You probably want to edit that.
That's fine. No, that's good. It's good. So what's the most unexpected place where you found inspiration? to create one of your projects or your art pieces?
Inebriation. In the pub. I don't know. I think often, often going to what I really like to do is there's a pub around the corner from me called It's as an Eights, and they play really loud music.
Good name for a pub as well.
But it's really nice just to go and sit in there on my own, get a pizza, and have a couple of pints and just write stuff.
Nice.
And just having that kind of space to think. And I think, alcohol has always been quite useful for me. And I think, to a certain point, it's that kind of balance of like where you may have one glass of wine, two glasses of wine, or one, 2 pints. But as soon as you go beyond that, you're lost. You just.
And then you can't read it. You're like, oh, no, what's this?
Oh, you just kind of nonsense. But it can be but as a unexpected place for ideas. I'm often quite surprised that the nonsense that I think I might have written, if I look at it the next day, I'm quite surprised that there's often stuff there that's useful and interesting and wouldn't necessarily have popped up if I hadn't have had a couple of drinks.
All right. No,
I'm not encouraging. I was with this. We need to have a disclaimer here.
Yeah, don't go to work drunk.
No.
Is there a message or feeling you hope viewers will take away from your work? Or do you not think of that kind of aspect of it? Or is it just if you're happy, then the rest will fall in place either way?
I suppose that depends on what you're doing. I don't know. People think. It's great when people, engage with it and are interested and
I mean,
with like
we were talking about whether there's a message or feeling you hope the viewers take away. And we're halfway through that question, I think.
Yes, but I think with some works, I'm just thinking of this work, Rumpelstiltskin, which is working with the folk tale, the Grimm's folk tale, and I work with the original translations of the story, but I also and take images and symbols connected to the story that link to contemporary world. And then within that, I also explore the characters, different characters within the story, and looking at character types, the girl, the parents, the king, and Rumpelstiltskin as these not unlike Rumpelstiltskin as this potential outsider and scapegoat, as well as a worker, and then the girl as this naive symbol of child coming into womanhood, and parents as mother and father. Sometimes in the story it's a mother and sometimes it's a father, depending on the translations. But as these people who are responsible but also completely irresponsible, and then the king as this position of power and control and belief that he can do whatever he wants within this kind of story. So for people to enter that, one, you have to be willing to kind of spend time to look at a work. It's a durational piece that lasts about half an hour for the whole text to go. You don't have to spend that long, but it's also quite decorative visually. So there's, for people to kind of go and engage with something, and especially if they have to spend time with it, is a big ask. It can be a big ask in the visual arts. It's not like in the cinema or something. Um, so it's great when people going and do kind of like spend time looking at it and thinking about it, and whether that's just a few minutes or 30 minutes, it varies. But it's nice if they can engage with that and see what I'm trying to do or what I'm trying to explore, and maybe then they also go away and think about this story or differently, as well as the connections that I make between this old folk tale and
I love
today.
that. I love that you use folk tale, folk stories. Um, do you use a lot of folklore in a lot of your work, or is it just in few that you kind of have that idea for? Or
I'm currently so they it's eh, it's one thing that has been fairly uh, consistent, but but works can also take ages. So that Rumpelstiltskin was around in development for about 5 years or something.
no,
I'm
okay,
currently working on something that's again looking at folk traditions but music. So looking at folk song
right.
in relation to protest and the history of protest
Do you play an
over the.
instrument at all?
Uh, no, I do have a ukulele, and
Oh, nice.
I kind of occasionally strum on it, which I really like to do, but I don't. I have
Oh,
to say
okay.
no.
I just assume because of like you do music in your art, so would have thought that there would be um yeah, obviously because you said about the musical link there, but as well as the folklore, I thought you might play an instrument, but
I kind of make noises with stuff and record them, but I'm not trained in any way. Unfortunately, I've just bought myself some microphones, actually, some contact mics
okay.
to be able to make some noise things, some instruments that out of tin cans or whatever, or
But
connecting them to the things.
collectively with other people, it could create a nice,
Well,
nice rhythmical music or something.
the collective thing, I think, is I did a singing course a year or so
Okay.
ago, 2 years ago. Um, so it was like an intensive kind of foundation singing course for a week, and it was brilliant. I'm just like putting myself in a situation where I've got to make some noise,
That's cool.
um,
That's really
and
good.
and just was really great for uh, just trying out um, the voice, but also I'm just going to plug you in. Or plug me in, I should say.
Isn't that the way when you're meant to be when creating and being creative in the world? Most supposed to be out of your comfort zone, is where you create your best work. There's not. That's one of the things I think Bowie said as well. Where you're meant to be, you know, and pushing yourself in that out of the familiarity.
I think it's usually I don't know, but for me, I think it's usually when you've been in that situation and you've come out of it and you can look back on it. I think in a situation where, I mean, well, I guess it will be where your comfort zone is. Um, I'm also thinking about there being in kind of, comfort zone is a situation where, you might be faced by violence or something, or you're getting arrested, or
Right.
um, you're on an
It's quite
aeroplane that's
extreme.
it's gonna be, yeah. In those kind of extreme situations, you're more likely to be thinking, how do you deal with this? How are you going to get out of this? Rather than start to, get out your watercolors and
in, in that situation, excuse me, I was going to get my watercolors out. I don't want to get into a fight right now, but can I paint you?
but having said that, like photographers who go into those
Oh yeah, and
situations,
that's very valid. Yeah,
because you're putting yourself in that position, right? You know that there's going to shit might kick off, or there's going to be visually there's going to be some kind of
true.
action there, and they have to separate themselves from the horrors that they might see in front of them.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, that's interesting.
So I think if putting yourself in a situation where there's discomfort, there is it's probably not quite the same as going into a war zone.
But it's still taking that risk, though, isn't it? It's that's where you
Yeah,
realize when you're in that element of one of the greats of when you're put put yourself in those positions where not everyone's going to be in, and not everyone's going to want to push themselves. Like not everyone's going to want to be amongst a war zone or um,
yeah.
in a situation where there is a fight kicking off or something where that's captured. So it creates a rarity to it because it's not the norm, is it? I mean,
I think you need to be in some way prepared for it. So for doing this singing course, I then went and worked with a few people from a choir that was also in
nice.
Northumberland. I'm not like, you're asking if I play an instrument. I'm not trained in anything,
But still,
musical.
yeah, it's an interesting thing to
Um,
try and do.
but so, but um, but accepting that thing that I'm not, but uh, let's try this because I think everybody's got a, singing it. Everybody's got a voice,
Hmm.
doesn't it? And whether good, bad, however it's seen, I think they're always potentially interesting. Um, and like old folk singers, the recordings from whenever, this croaky old voices from Scotland or Ireland or Southern England, Cornwall, and these
Ah,
oh
there are
folk singers
fisherman
again,
songs and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, extraordinary voices, and they're more croaky and warm, and they're more
There's
interesting.
character to it though that makes
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, um,
I'm interested to sort of what other artists have inspired you then over the years, from early stages to most recent stages, because I can imagine because you have like a an orthodox approach to the way I would create art. So I kind of feel like I'm interested in knowing who inspires you in in the beginning, even to put you on the track you are now, or unless you are just inspired by the idea rather than other artists or other people, or but
someone like so like early days is like people like English painters. What's his name? Lanyon, Peter Lanyon,
okay,
Ivan Hitchens. Those, yeah, love their work. Um, uh, Matisse, big influence. Um,
nice, yeah,
but then, like jumping up a few years forward, like people like Paul McCarthy, Paul McCarthy,
right.
um, who does a installation, often actually also using like Pinocchio or
Oh, really?
folk tale, but more leaning towards Hollywood than uh,
Right.
than the Grimm. So it does really twist them. I used to love his work. Um,
Is his
um,
sculpture as well, or is it?
Sculpture and performance stuff. Did a lot of so making things to be recorded, the videos, but then also presenting the kind of scenes as installations.
Nice?
Um, American artist based in California, I guess. But um, uh, just looking around on the wall here, see if there's anything. Um, I mean, people like Banksy. I think
That's cool.
that
Yeah.
approach to just do what you like and humor and with a bit of a political edge, great. Um,
And there's a new like piece that's appeared in Hove that everyone's trying to claim as Banksy, but they haven't said this. They've said there's no. It doesn't seem like a Banksy. It seems like a copy that's appeared in Hove recently, but normally they make an announcement if it says they take ownership of it, but they haven't.
yeah,
Whoever
normally it's
whoever
just
they are.
yeah, normally yeah, shares, doesn't it?
Yeah,
When he's done something. So.
yeah, that's it. But there's nothing on their website or
Unless
socials.
I look at what books are around here. Recently bought a book on, or recently, not so long ago, bought a book on protest art. uh,
Oh, interesting.
stuff. Mm, There's a Picasso down there, which is sitting on the floor, but I think I took that to, and like a lot of his stuff I use for when I'm teaching.
Okay.
Um, can be actually just about everybody, depending on what I'm doing.
What
Sorry,
would
it's
be
a bit
what would
vague.
be what would be your dream project someday? You know, if you ever got this, if you had the right setting, the right um funding for it, what would be, you know, something that
It's
you've kind of thought like I would love to do something like this? Or...
Well, I think we just do it, don't we? Are we doing it? I mean, I think, this, I'm working on this project now. I'm trying to get some funding, but all I'm trying to do is just buy the time to be able to focus on what I want to do. Whether it includes, spending some time doing some research around the country, going to some archives in Yorkshire and um, museums in Manchester and stuff,
Right.
um, and just spending some time just looking at things or researching stuff. Um, and it'd be nice to be able to get on with this. There is a project I started about 30 years ago. I started to make a road movie,
Oh, cool.
and and I was filming Friends, and um, it never was. It's never been finished. It exists on 60 millimeter and Super 8. Um,
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah.
um, and I'd like to return to that. But in that time of doing that, I've transferred the film onto, I think it was onto digital eight, so digital video. Um, but then I had my camera stolen, my video camera stolen. Um,
Oh,
so I lost not only the uh,
did you ever get
sort
it
of
back?
no, and I somehow it must have happened when I was moving house, when I was moving to this place, which is 9 years ago. Um, so I lost the camera. So I keep thinking this camera is going to reappear. I still think it might reappear. It's not. I think it must have been stolen off the back of the van when I was moving house. But so it was an expensive video camera, so I've never replaced it, never been able to replace it. And so, but also this with which is probably more interesting in this story, the people who were in this video are now 30 years older. They're a lot older. Um,
Oh, I hope you
and I'd
find it.
love to go back and film them and spend time, finishing this 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 film. Because it can be done, it can just if I
There's
can get
got
the
there's
film back again.
there's got to be like a Netflix documentary in there somewhere where you could do a track of this, track down that video camera, as well as recording the newer version 30 years later, and at the end have both the videos together. Oh, that would be. I hope you do find it at some point, or it just
Um,
shows up. It would be amazing.
it's not going to show up, but 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 that's not the problem really. The issue is just again having the space and time to focus on doing this work,
Yeah.
and so for this I'd probably need to re-digitize the film so that it get it projected, and it's just all the little bits, and then finding the people, getting the people who were in the film to agree to be in it, and then just writing texts and figuring out, again, this fantasy project of just
That's cool.
it comes down to time,
Yeah.
um, and just getting on with it, and not being distracted by writing in another bloody funding application or
Oh, they take so long. But no, no, I really, really appreciate you coming on to the show today. Talking of time, we are running out of time because I like to keep it around half an hour anyway.
yeah.
But I know there's like a number of questions I really wanted to ask you, but one thing I would like to ask is you know, and I would like to round it up with a positive um, kind of insight for future artists. Um, Basically, I want to ask you, what would you say to an artist to inspire to kind of, you know, give them that kind of oomph again, where that, you know, an artist who's kind of feeling like they're stuck in a moment and they've got no real direction where they're wanting to go, or they're just having a moment, you know, a, a, momentary crisis where they're thinking, I don't know what to do, where to go, and how to. What words of inspiration would you give to an up and coming artist or a new artist or someone who's stuck in a moment?
I think looking at other stuff, I think that's one can be a really useful for me. Just just going to an exhibition, because it just creates this space
Yeah.
of somebody else's space, and it allows you to kind of think about it. Do you like it? Don't like it? Or ideas that it then gives to you.
Mhm.
We're all influenced. We're constantly responding to things, um, and and making. There was one thing that I used to do and I haven't done it for ages, but I used to do it if I was making something and it was going well, I would treat myself to something. Like I'd go and visit friends if I was in Leeds, I'd go and visit my brother in Brighton or something, or have a trip to London, or
Yeah.
but because if I felt there was kind of a sense of achievement, then I'd do something that was, I was paying myself for, for in some ways. I'm not,
Yeah, no, that's
um,
really nice. I like that.
yeah. So I think for, if you're just going out and seeing stuff, seeing other stuff what other people are doing, and that might be, just going to see some dance or theatre thing or something you wouldn't normally do,
Hmm.
maybe as well can be like I used to just go see bands in Camden because
Ah,
no idea
cool.
who I was going to go and see, but just go and just turn up and see what was on that night in a pub just to.
Awesome.
And that's you put yourself in a place where is unexpected. You're on your own, um, and there's some kind of entertainment. There's something going on, so there's a reason to be there. But you've bought this kind of time just to sit and think, and and just keep a sketchbook with you or.
To jot down a few ideas and stuff. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. Especially like going out to see live bands to just break up the norm and inspire.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Brighton. There's lots going on there. London, we're so fortunate in so many ways. Although it'd be lovely to be in the middle of nowhere, it's also fantastic having the choice of stuff to see. Yeah,
We get the best of both worlds in Brighton because you've got the nightlife, but then you can go up on the downs and it can all be um,
yeah, it's kind
quiet
of.
and
Um,
just yeah, a completely different setting, and it's only like a stone's throw away sort of thing. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, Leo. I really appreciate it. Taking time out of your schedule to come on, and your the mosaic steps and the words on the fences are still visible and still all intact in
oh, good,
East Brighton.
brilliant. Okay,
So
cool.
it's all still looking
Well
good.
done. You should try and get some things to grow around those letters
Oh
if
yeah,
it's possible.
yeah, definitely, yeah, yeah,
All right, well done. Good for that. And thank you
awesome.
for asking me.
No, that's cool. I really appreciate it. I mean, it was on the cards, but we just needed to find out when it was suitable, and this turned out to be much better, really. 'Cause we could throughout the festival, it was just there was too much going on and hard to get everything, yeah, ready. But yeah, awesome.
Excellent.